Hello there, my name is Mackenzie and welcome to my little corner of the internet. In October, I posted the creation process for the Autumn 2025 collection, and as promised, today I'll be showing you how I created the Winter 2025 collection that took 25 days to complete and officially dropped in late October. The winter collection centers around snow-covered landscapes, holiday decorations, and comforting warm color palettes inspired by everyday life during the cold and gray season of winter. I didn't want it to feel too Christmassy, so the paintings that feature Christmas time themes will be more on the subtle side. We're starting off with the painting that I thought would be the easiest to do because coming off the autumn collection, not gonna lie, I was feeling a little bit burnt out and I wanted to take it easy for the first few days of doing the winter collection. The color palette for this one was pretty easy as it's literally black and white, and the subject matter is also on the more basic side, with trees and plant life making up the background and a blanket of snow taking up the foreground. Doing the bare shrubs here was sort of difficult as I wasn't sure where to even begin adding in the amount of tiny details with each branch covered in snow, but as usual, my tried and true method of slapping paint on and patting it out with my finger was a solid base for creating this effect that I was then able to build on somehow. I say somehow because I honestly don't even know how I do stuff, I just go at it and hope for the best, and it usually somehow works out. Like with the Early Bird Gets the Worm block from the Autumn collection, this block has a pretty boring foreground and a cat. Although this time the cat was actually in my reference photo and is the star subject I was taking a photo of, so I'm not just making him up this time. Since the next two blocks are essentially the same color palette, I started block 1 and 2 at the same time until my hyperfocus kicked in and I focused solely on number 1 until it was done. So we're coming back around to number 2 here and making progress on that until I get bored enough to start block 3. This one is another wintry scene of a birdhouse from my nanny's front yard, but unlike with block 1 where I stayed very loyal to the original reference image, I'll be making adjustments to this one. The first stage of completing the background was smooth sailing and pretty straightforward, but once I got to the foreground, that's where I had to start making some changes. The original photo isn't square, so some of the foreground elements like this little garden light here would get cut off, and as I really wanted it in here, I moved it up so that it's next to the birdhouse. The birdhouse is a grayish color in real life, but on cloudy days it takes on a bluish tone. I made the birdhouse itself a darker muted blue tone to break up all the black and white and brown that this piece has, and although I originally followed the reference image and made the roof of the birdhouse brown, my nanny pointed out that it's actually a copper tone. It just looks brown in the picture, but I decided to go with the color it actually is, which I think was a good choice as it added a bit more color to an otherwise pretty boring color palette. The cardinal was the final artistic liberty I took to create a focal point for the piece that really stands out but still realistically fits in with the environment. I thought about adding more to him, like having him hold a piece of ribbon or a stick or something, but sometimes less is more, so I left him as is. Now, block number 3 is, again, a similar color palette to the first two, and I promise this will not be the whole collection. The other 4 are far more diverse in palette, but since I already had a lot of these colors, I figured I'd hit 3 birds with one stone. Another snow-covered landscape, but this time of the view out my bedroom window. When painting the road, I was having trouble capturing the tire marks, and it took like literally 2 hours of working on it until it started looking right. About halfway though, I realized that leaving some texture really helped with the realism. So although I usually try to remove chunks of paint and keep things as flat as possible, I started deliberately creating little dashes of paint to help create that illusion of tire marks and snow, and I really like how it looked. For this one, I'm using 2 different references. I liked the look of the window framing the edges of the painting, so it's obvious you're looking out a window. But the tree in the front yard looked further away in the photo than it does in real life, so I made sure to paint it larger to more closely resemble the real view a bit better. I know it seems pointless to have spent so much time painting the background that I'll just be covering up by this tree anyway, but that's the process, okay? You have to paint everything in layers. I almost overdid it with the berries and snow covering them, but I think I was able to recover okay here. The window edges took about 2 hours on their own, according to my notes, because I was having a hard time getting the tiny lines in there and kept having to redo it until I felt that it was good enough. AKA, I got fed up and just decided to call it a day. Now we're bringing some color into this collection. Some of you who watch my content more regularly might recognize this as my dresser, and you would be correct. I'm going to be making a few tiny changes to its real-life appearance, but for this one, we're sticking pretty close to its real-life counterpart. This Anne of Green Gables book set is one of my most prized possessions, but it might surprise you to know that it alone took me like 2 hours just to get the books right. Like, not even the little details, like before that, just to get the books the right shape. This painting was filled with small details and took about 5 days total to complete, crowning it as the painting that took the longest in this collection to do. The mug from the Autumn collection is back and was just as big of a pain in my ass as it was the last time I painted it. I actually completed it pretty easily and I loved the way that it looked, but then while painting something else around it, I messed it up a little bit, and then I tried to fix it, and then I ended up crying while painting it a second time out of sheer frustration and felt like I never wanted to look at this mug again for the rest of my life. I woke up one morning shortly afterwards to find that my nanny had thrown it out for completely unrelated reasons, but it's kind of funny how things turn out sometimes. I felt like I set its demise in motion with my thoughts alone. Anyway, there's so many little details in this painting that I love so much, like the candy dish and the pretty bow on the book. I've gotten a lot of compliments on the cookies as well, and I can confirm they were as delicious as they looked. At this point in the process, my phone ran out of storage, and so did my laptop with close to 2 terabytes of storage. Yeah, I was editing a few pretty large video projects, so I had to leave the footage on my laptop until they were complete, which meant that I couldn't film the painting process for this collection as extensively as I normally would, so there will be bigger jumps in progress between shots. I always struggle with making these art videos on the shorter side, and I think that might be the reason why they never do well in views, so it's something I've been trying to work on and improve with each video. Funny enough, this storage issue actually made that a lot easier, as I had to be very picky about what I chose to capture, and it gave me a lot less footage to work with, so it kind of forced me to get comfortable with having less overall. This one is meant to be a tabletop filled with stuff, like someone has unpacked their boxes of Christmas decor and they're getting ready to decorate their space. The gallery I had my work in years ago used to have a large table filled with all kinds of cool handmade stuff, and I saw these little sheep there one year and felt inspired, so I snuck a little picture, but I never ended up making any use of it until now. I made a lot of changes from that reference, adding in candles and a basket of tree bulbs in the back, the lantern and the snow globe in the upper right, and the Christmas storybook from the previous block made another appearance here to fill in the empty space in the bottom right. The only things remaining from the original reference photo are the sheep and the pillow. I wanted it to feel Christmassy without beating you over the head with Christmas aesthetics, so I made it more red, brown, and blue in palette with only touches of green. Block 6 was a bit different. It's still gonna have a ton of brown, but I allowed it to be a bit more Christmassy in color palette, with green and red being much more prominent here. The hardest part of this piece was the banister spokes, which I had to spend like 2 days doing alone to get that shine on them just right. The time it took was worth it because it looks great, but man, it took ages. We're on to the final block, and as I've mentioned before in other block collection videos, there's always one block that's a bit different from the rest, and I think this is the one here. I really loved this picture of a bowl of soup I took a few years ago, and given warm bowls of soup are a very common feature of the winter season, it felt like the perfect time to make use of it. For someone who takes millions of pictures of my food on the regular, you'd think I'd paint food far more often than I do. Like with the mug in the previous collection, I was told this one wouldn't sell as no one wants to buy paintings of food, but history begs to disagree, so I did it anyway. I said in the last collection that people are more likely to buy a piece if it's generic enough that they can insert themselves into it, and there's nothing more universal than food. I've spent the last hour and a half doing this because I got the soup halfway done and realized that the bowl shape was kind of wonky and the soup shape was wrong, so I tried to fix it, but then that ended up leading to completely redoing the bowl. And so an hour and a half, about 2 hours later, here we are. And I'm now going to try to get the soup done and the crackers done and fix up kind of around the edges where I've sort of messed stuff up. And hopefully I can get this one done today, because this is my last day to work on these, and I still need to finish all of those as well, so I was stressing near the end here, but as an ADHD girly, I am fueled best by the stress that my brain creates for itself completely unnecessarily. The final stage here is going back and painting in the blue shadow layer for blocks 1 to 6 and adding highlights and final touches where needed. For this collection, I decided to do something a little bit different and add gold glitter to some of the blocks, so I did that at this stage. I used a gold glitter paint pen, which I guess did the job fine enough, but I'd like to eventually upgrade to something higher quality, like those expensive glitter watercolor paints that Facebook keeps mocking me with every day. I think this final stage is my favorite part of the whole process because the highlights and the shadowing really brings it all to life. It makes a really big difference. And that brings us to the very end, where I sign the front. On the back, I date the pieces, sign my name again, and write their product code on the bottom right corner. Here's how they look at the gallery with my little setup here, featuring a few pieces from my last drop-off, some prints, and my business cards. This collection is one of my favorites out of all the ones I've done over the years. I tried some new things with the gold details, I played around with straying from my references a bit, which was a lot of fun, and I also experimented a bit with texture too, which is new for me, and something that even though it got covered up in the end by the tree, I still learned a lot from doing. This collection feels so sophisticated, but also so homey and nostalgic, and I just love how perfectly it evokes the warmth of staying cozy inside on a cold winter day. If you'd like to own one of these as a print or purchase them in holiday card form, I'll have the link to my shop page in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you around here again real soon.